Also a very special truck that has put a smile on my face. And on top of all of that, you can put it into Sport Plus and you can put your foot down and it's like, what? Crazy. Today we are in the Mercedes-Benz AMG G63, the G-Wagon, finally. A car, or a truck I should say, that's ubiquitous in West LA and Beverly Hills. You see them all over, and made famous by the Kardashians, of course. And I'm wearing this red shirt not only because it matches the red interior here of the G-Wagon, but because I figured if Budweiser is the king of beers, then the G-Wagon, the Gelandewagen, is the king of off-roaders. And Gelandewagen, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correct, actually means terrain vehicle in German. So this car's entire identity has been an off-road vehicle, a Jeep-like truck. So I'm gonna get it out on the road and discuss why I think the G-Wagon, the G63 in particular, this new one, is a beast. If you guys enjoy this kind of content, make sure to subscribe and to like the video. It helps the channel out. And without further ado, let's get out on the road. All right, so setting off here in the G-Wagon, it's in some ways a unique driving experience. It's definitely a unique driving experience in the luxury segment because it does feel more like a Jeep or a proper off-roader than many of your contemporary SUVs would otherwise. And I mean, in comfort, which is the setting I'm currently in, it's a pretty easy and comfortable car to drive. I mean, as the name would indicate, you can cruise around. Despite being an AMG and despite having a hot rod of an engine, it doesn't overwhelm you in any way. And I can totally see why many housewives drive this around, pick the kids up from school, and have no issues, especially once again in comfort. But if I flick the dynamic drive mode selector over to sport mode, you feel that suspension tighten up. The steering also tightens up. The accelerator pedal is a bit more responsive, and the beast has certainly awoken. If I put my foot down, woo! Oh my God. Yeah, this thing has a lot of get up and go, especially, and of course, obviously in a straight line because it's a very powerful motor. Now I want to discuss what the engine is here in the G-Wagon, and the G63 in particular. It is a 4-liter twin turbo V8, the same type of engine you'd find in the likes of an E63 or an AMG GTR. Now, it has a bit less power than the former and the exact same amount of power as the latter, meaning it has the exact same 577 horsepower as the AMG GTR. And this also boasts 627 pound-feet of torque, which means that it's a very thrusty motor. You definitely get that punch in the stomach when you put your foot down. And it's one of my favorite things to do in this car. We'll do it right here off of the stop sign. We'll punch it again. We're actually going to go over into Sport Plus mode now. And I'll even engage manual mode really quick. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so it's not in any, by any means going to compete with your fastest sports cars, obviously, but for an SUV and for a Jeep-like SUV, meaning that it kind of is a box on wheels, it doesn't get much better than this in the sense of performance. Now, the car is mated to a 9-speed automatic, the likes of which you can find in many other Mercedes-Benz models along the range, but all G-Wagons naturally come in all-wheel drive. Mercedes-Benz is 4MATIC. So one of the nice benefits of that, of course, is the off-roading, which we'll get into, and the capabilities of this truck, but it's also that in some spirited driving, taking off from a light, around bends, you have a lot of grip. You can really put the power down in a straight line, which obviously is not always the case of a nearly 600 horsepower car when it's rear-wheel drive. So that's one of the kind of side benefits. And I think before I get into the off-roading capabilities of this truck, which are many, what really surprised me getting behind the wheel of this truck within just 5 minutes is how capable it is around a windy road. So if I throw it into Sport Plus once again, you can really take turns at an astonishing speed. I would have never thought a G-Wagon could take a turn that fast and not flip over for that matter. Now, part of that is because here in the new G-Wagon, ever since 2019 when this new body style came out. They have dramatically improved the G-Wagon. So in 1979, when the G-Wagons first came to be, they were really meant to be rugged off-road trucks and not the glamorous, you know, grocery getters that they became 30 some odd years later, and made famous, of course, by the likes of the Kardashians and whatnot. So when they first came out, they were off-road, rugged trucks, and they slowly became desirable. And come the late 90s, early 2000s, they definitely were picking up some steam here in the US as they were being imported. Then they were brought over to the US, I believe, in 2003. In 2013, they were dramatically revamped. They got some LED headlights, some new mirrors, a new infotainment system, actually a pretty rearranged interior. But the core of the truck, the chassis kind of remained the same. They actually got a new engine as well in 2013, but the overall chassis was the exact same one you would have found way back in 1979. And finally, in 2019, as I said, 40 years after its inception, we get a redesigned G-Wagon. So effectively the second generation G-Wagon. It took 40 years. Hopefully it won't take another 40 to get another one, but I imagine it won't because this truck has become so popular. I digress. They made the G-Wagon about 2.1 inches longer, 2.5 inches wider. Now the length you don't feel so much, aside from the fact that the interior has a bit more space within it. So the front feels, well, I mean, I can't say there's a huge difference in legroom up in the front, but you certainly have a bit more legroom in the back. And the back went from being very cramped in general and feeling a bit like a Jeep Wrangler back seat, which is not a compliment, to feeling more akin to your standard luxury SUV rear seat. But the width is really what contributes to that, and you feel that up front as well. So that 2.5 inches of extra width not only helps the car be more planted, have a lower center of gravity, and effectively handle better, as I just demonstrated, but it also gives you a lot more shoulder room. You and the passenger are now a bit more spread out, and again, in the rear, you have that wider bench, which could more easily fit 5 adults than in total in this truck. This has a very large greenhouse. In fact, this is probably the first truck, car, any vehicle I've driven where I've kind of brought the seat up. I usually like to go all the way down. I'm about 6'2", so being all the way down feels nice for me. In this truck, I did it. I didn't love it. Brought it up a couple inches, and I feel like I have a better view, and it's just because of that large greenhouse. I felt like I was a little kid sitting too low in the truck. Visibility is pretty great. You still have a little bit of that spare tire in the rear, that fifth wheel that is blocking a bit of your visibility, but that window is just so large that doesn't bother me. Mirrors are pretty large, certainly larger than the mirrors you'd find in your older G-Wagons. But truly, what makes the new G-Wagon feel special is the interior. Now, I don't want to take away from the off-road capabilities, but the reality is most people that buy a G-Wagon won't take it fast around a twisty road like this, and they almost certainly won't take it off-roading. What they'll do is use it to pick up the kids from school, drive to the office, run errands, and effectively use it as a daily driver. Now, in that sense, they've made this new G-Wagon fantastic compared to the old one. Whether it's little things like the fact that the tailgate can now hold itself open and more easily opens, in fact, to all of the incredible tech. Now, it doesn't have Mercedes' latest MBUX system, unfortunately, but it does have the last generation command system, which still features 2 massive dual screens. They've got to each be 12, 13 inches in width, and it's just fantastic to look at a digital cluster here. I have Apple CarPlay full screen on the secondary screen here. This is such a massive improvement from the previous infotainment systems that were in the G-Wagons, even the 2013 through 2018 models. Next, you get a bit more refinement overall and some higher quality materials. The center console here is much better integrated and finally has cup holders, which we'll get to in a second. But the real benefit is the fact that the G-Wagon drives much nicer than it used to. It's not a slob anymore, and it feels like a pretty nice balance between a standard luxury SUV and, say, a Jeep Wrangler, where before I might have even given the edge to the Jeep Wrangler in the sense of driving experience. One of the only parts of the old G-Wagon that still remains here in the new G-Wagon is actually the door handles, and praise the Lord for that, because the sound of these doors shutting, the sound of the locks unlocking and locking, oh my, I mean, listen to this. It's like a shotgun action click. It's incredible. The only downside, unfortunately, because those exterior door handles are the exact same ones since the late 70s is that you don't get any sort of keyless entry, keyless access in this G-Wagon, and you are forced to then use the key fob to lock and unlock the car every time you want to get in and get out. So that's the one downside, but the fact that these door handles are still there and that sound you get, that satisfying sound shutting the door, it's fantastic. Now, I told you guys I'm gonna get back to the cup holders because I wanna knock out a quick Tallboy test before I get into some of the off-road capabilities of this truck and a little bit more about what makes it so special, such as the looks. So here's a Tallboy test. Now, I mentioned the added length, I mentioned the added width, but I didn't mention that Mercedes-Benz was able to shave off a claimed 385 or so pounds from the predecessor to this model G-Wagon, and that also helps get the G-Wagon a car and driver claimed 3.9 seconds 0 to 60. So there's no launch control, but we'll punch it off the line here. Oh, we got a cop. We won't punch it off the line, actually. We certainly will not punch it off the line. There's a cop right here. Perfect timing. Sheriff. All right, well, that was up. Now that the cop is gone, and we'll see. Ooh. Now, without a 1 foot rollout, I don't know if that was 3.9, but that was certainly in the low to mid 4s. Very, very fast. That was without any brake boosting. That was without, again, any sort of rollout. That felt very quick. What you also do notice, though, is the front end lifts a lot, and that's, of course, because the suspension is on the looser side. It's not a proper sports car. This is ultimately a off-roader. And it truly is a fantastic off-roader. I started this video off by saying that this is effectively the king of off-roaders, and some will bask and say, no, that's a Jeep Wrangler, that's a Defender, that's even a Land Cruiser. No, the thing is, when I say it's the king of off-roaders, I'm not saying that it's absolutely and certainly the most capable off-roader, or that a lifted Rubicon Wrangler couldn't, you know, take a certain trail or do rock crawling that this certainly can't do as it is stock. But it's the fact that this gives you everything. It's the fact that for a nearly $200,000 truck with the luxury, the carbon fiber, the almost 600 horsepower twin turbo V8 motor, that you also get an incredible amount of off-road capability. Now, I'll link up to a smoking tire video where where Matt Farah takes the G550 up a very difficult trail here in SoCal. And that's definitely a more deep dive into the capabilities of this truck off-road. But just the fact that you have 3 locking diffs here. You have a center diff, you have a rear diff, and you have a front diff. I mean, that's pretty impressive when it comes to off-road capability. And you also have a transfer case here, so you can go into low range mode. In fact, you have to go to low range mode in order to lock up any of the diffs. I just really love the idea of being in an exceptionally luxurious truck, the kind of product that's really meant for the upper echelon of society, if not only because of its roughly $200,000 or near $200,000 market value, but for the fact that it is a bit of a flashy and luxurious Mercedes-Benz product, top tier product, AMG as well in this case. The fact that you have all this leather everywhere, you have carbon fiber, you have metal treatments on the speaker grills, you have these massive screens, you have a carbon fiber steering wheel with Alcantara, large paddle shifters. I mean, the fact that you have these dynamic side bolsters that can kind of inflate to hold you in around a turn, it's a little bit gimmicky, but just the fact that you have things like that, and again, simultaneously, you can keep up with the stock, probably Rubicon Wrangler on a trail, is just, it's a really, really nice feeling. And I think it's the kind of feeling that if you buy into this truck, if you buy into the things like the sound of the doors and some of the rugged sensations, even though they've kind of gotten rid of a lot of them here in the new G-Wagon, but even just off of the aesthetic of this truck, you really appreciate that it's capable, even if you don't test out its capabilities. It's kind of like having a really awesome chronograph watch that you may not use very often because you have an iPhone with a stopwatch, but the fact that you have a flyback chronograph yacht, I mean, just the people who have the money for those things, and if you're considering this, you may very well may be the kind of person who appreciates a nice watch. This to me is like that. It's like if a Wrangler is a G-Shock, then this is like a Rolex Daytona. It probably does a little bit less, but it does it all so very well and with such great design and finish. Now this review wouldn't be complete if I didn't go through the looks, obviously. Now this new G-Wagon with its wider stance looks very, very menacing from the front. Now being a G63, this particular truck has an even more aggressive lower front fascia. It has a super aggressive bull bar that I love. I know some G-Wagons don't have the bull bar. I am a huge fan of it. I don't love it so much on the G550 where it's higher up and blocks the headlights. Here where it blocks the lower intakes, I think it looks fantastic and aggressive. And with the night package that this truck has, being blacked out against the silver paint color, it's sporty and it is a little bit motorsporty. I mean, it's not really motorsporty, but it's very cool to see that, and it helps draw your attention even more to the front end of this truck. You get the Panamericana grille here on the G63, and it's a really, really nice touch. Obviously, that's the case across the entire AMG line now, but it makes the front end look even more aggressive along with that bull bar. And I didn't mention the Panamericana grille. It kind of gets overshadowed by the bull bar to me, but it's very cool. The headlights are still circular. The turn signals are still up here on the kind of on the hood, and it's fun because you can turn them on. I can like see it's on right now. It's the fun little gimmick. It also helps in off-roading because it kind of places your front corners a bit for you. Everything has a bit of a reason here in the G-Wagon. Now from the side, I think that's where the G-Wagon looks the most similar. Very boxy still, the windshield's very flat. In fact, all your windows are very flat. The entire rear end is like almost a straight wall. The side exit exhaust is also one of the coolest parts of this truck. It's kind of become synonymous with G-Wagons, at least in the SUV space. You have them on both sides, dual pipes on both sides, so effectively quad exhaust here on the AMG G63. Here you have 21-inch wheels, which are a middle option. I'm really a bigger fan of those 22s that are kind of like Y-spoke. They're like the main AMG wheels in black. I think those look really, really cool. That's probably one thing that I wish this particular truck had. The rear end looks a bit wider than the previous gen, and maybe a tiny bit too wide looking from the rear in my opinion, but at least the wheels really fill the arches up and they have a good bit of poke, so you don't have any sort of goofy, weak stance from the rear. Now, if you're a potential owner and you've been watching this video thinking, what is Rio talking about? I will take my G-Wagon off-roading, my AMG G63, my $200,000 luxury truck, I will take it off-roading. Well, I have good news for you then, which is that Mercedes-Benz now offers a trail package, and that trail package includes mud flaps, which are the least important part of it, 20-inch wheels that are, I believe, a unique design, and they come wrapped in all-terrain tires instead of performance tires, and they come with some underbody protection and cladding. So if you really do want to take your G-Wagon off-roading, and if you insist on taking a couple $100,000 luxury truck off-roading, then you can, and maybe you should get then the trail package instead of the standard truck, but you will then suffer in the canyons if you're gonna whip it hard a little bit because you'll have all terrains instead of summer tires. But yeah, I was really impressed with how hard this car could take a turn. I'd always had this, I mean, I don't want to say it's a preconceived notion, it's kind of factual that the older G-Wagons have one of the I think maybe the highest center of gravity of any mass-produced vehicle, and they were thus the most susceptible to tipping over, to rolling over, that they've dramatically improved this car's handling capabilities, as well as obviously made it even faster in a straight line. That 9-speed automatic is just an improvement from the 7-speed. The looks are classic G-Wagon, but revamped and modernized, and the truck feels incredibly luxurious on the inside, makes you feel a bit special, and I'm more of a fan of it than I thought I'd be. I think part of that is the fact that you can drive it hard, but I could see myself driving one of these if I had the money, which I definitely don't, because it's comfortable enough. The seats are very comfy. They have massage function. I have my cooled seat on right now in the very hot 91-degree weather, so it gives you the full package. The Burmester sound system sounds amazing. You have good space, as I already mentioned. You have the oh shit handle because this is an off-roader, but it's really nice for your passenger to rest their hands as they stretch and relax and get comfortable on your trip to the grocery store, because that's what you're really gonna do in this car, aren't you? So on that note, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. New videos are dropping every single week. Comment down below, let me know what you're trying to see. I'll do my best to make it happen. And as always, this is Rio, peace out.